The scripture today is from Hinduism, Katha Upanishad 2.3, 7, and 8. Beyond the senses is the mind. Beyond the mind is the intellect. Higher than the intellect is the great Atman, the universal self. Higher than the great Atman is the unmanifest. Beyond the unmanifest is the person, all-pervading and imperceptible. So ends the reading. The scripture is referring to different levels of consciousness. With age and wisdom, we learn to observe and experience life from different points of view. We might contemplate the concept of God and the universe as being an all-encompassing energy, and that everything in the universe is interrelated. There are times in our prayers, our meditations, a walk in nature, or any reflective time when we might experience a connection to something more expansive than our own day-to-day concerns. There are those moments that everything just feels right. We feel that we are an integral part of the whole. There are also those times we feel alone. We feel a duality, a boundary existing between our being and the rest of the universe. Our day-to-day experiences, our emotions, our egos are very real. Our decisions are ultimately ours alone to make. Our individual responsibility for our decisions and actions can make us feel separate and alone. Yet many religions state that God is everywhere and we are never alone. How do we reconcile these conflicting experiences that we have? From the book World Scripture, a comparative anthology of sacred texts, ultimate reality is a mystery, not a thing that can be defined by form or a concept of being, not a thing that can be defined at all. Last week, an AMC congregant texted me an old TED Talk presented by Jill Bolt Taylor, a scientist and a brain researcher whose research has included mapping the brain's cells' functions and its reactions to specific chemicals. She was drawn to her profession in science to study mental illness. Concurrent with her research, while exercising in her home, she had a stroke. In 4 hours, her brain deteriorated to a point where she could not walk, talk, read, or recall any of her life. Ms. Taylor begins her TED Talk in the context of her stroke, explaining some basic functions of the brain. The two hemispheres of the brain communicate with each other, but they're separate. They process differently. They have different personalities. The right side of the brain is in the present moment and thinks in pictures. It uses all our senses and determines what the present moment sounds like, smells like, feels like. Through our senses, we are connected to all the energy around us. The light waves, the sound waves. We are energy beings connected to each other through the functioning of our right hemispheres. In any given moment, in the right hemisphere, we are perfect and everything is in order. The left side of the brain thinks linearly and methodically. All thoughts are about the past or the future. The left side takes all the current information we are taking in and categorizes it and associates it with our past experiences. The left side thinks in language. There is almost always ongoing brain chatter. We know that. We're all our brains. We can't make them be quiet. The left side is calculating and determining what we need to do next. It will remind us to pick up something for dinner on the way home. The left side is focused on the individual and how I will react to the world around me. From the left side's point of view, I am separate from the world around me. The morning of her stroke, she lost the left brain, the I am. She had a pounding pain that continually gripped and then released her. She continued exercising and noticed her hands looked like claws, and her body started looking weird. Her consciousness shifted to where she was witnessing herself. She was moving very slowly, no fluidity in her walk. In the shower, she could hear her body talking to her muscles. She began losing a sense of her physical boundaries. She felt her body was interacting with the energy in the room. Her left brain had gone silent. She felt enormous and expansive. Then her left brain would begin functioning and started letting her know, we have a problem. So she comes out of this expansive energy and we have a problem. Then she would drift back to the right brain with a seeming awareness of the whole external world. In the right brain, she experienced no stress. She felt lighter. And any issues with relationships were all gone. She felt a sense of peacefulness. She immediately lost 37 years of emotional baggage. In the right brain, she was experiencing profound peace and awareness. And then her left brain would kick back in again and say, you have got to focus. We really have a problem here. She wondered to herself, can I drive? Her right arm was paralyzed. Her left brain figures out, I'm having a stroke. Then her right brain tells her, this is so cool, as she reconnects with all her senses again. Her left brain starts saying, right brain, you have got to leave me alone. I am really busy. She could not remember her office phone number. She had a stack of business cards that included hers, but she couldn't read them. All she saw was countless pixels when she's looking at the cards. It took 45 minutes to go through the stack of cards and recognize hers. Then she started dialing the number, but she couldn't remember which number she dialed. So she took her paralyzed arm and stuck it on the card, and she would dial one number at a time and move it over. Well, she finally gets hold of her office, and her office colleague picks up, and she tries to talk. And all she hears is, roar, roar, roar. And then he tries to talk back. She hears the same thing. She just hears these noises. Well, he figured out something's really wrong. He sends an ambulance. And on the way to Mass General, she just curled up into a ball, and she felt her spirit surrender. She just knew either the doctors would rescue her or she would transition. It's like it was just the way it was. She said goodbye to life and was surprised to wake up that afternoon. Waking up, all her senses were acute and hard to process. Sounds were too loud. Light was too bright. She couldn't identify her body at all. At the same time, she felt her energy was huge and encompassing a lot of space. She did not feel like she could squeeze all her energy back into her tiny body. The stroke allowed her to witness the left and right hemispheres of her brain working separately from each other. She had never experienced the magnitude of her energetic connection to everything around her, and she gained an understanding of her relationship to the energy of the universe. This connection to the whole is an experience that mystics of all religions throughout history have documented, very close to what she's saying. Ms. Taylor realized that if I found this, all people can find this. People can choose to step to the right hemisphere. You can consciously move from the logical linear left brain to the present experience of being with all your senses. We all hear being in the present, mindfulness. This was an insight that motivated her to recover. 2.5 weeks after her stroke, they removed a golf ball-sized tumor out of her brain. It took 8 years to fully recover. She concluded her talk, we are a light force in the universe, and we can make the choice to step into the right hemisphere or the left hemisphere. She asked, which would you choose and when? She continued, the more we choose the right hemisphere, the more peace we will find and spread into the world. And she concluded with the thought, this is an idea worth spreading. My opinion Is her experience explained in the context of her scientific background? It's a clear, practical explanation of the mystery surrounding spiritual experiences. We all, in this religion, in United Metaphysical Churches, we always talk about this experience. But this is a scientist explaining how she viewed it, going from one to the left, from one side of the brain to the other. As metaphysicians, we don't believe in miracles. We believe things happen that we don't understand. I'll repeat the scripture again today. Behind the senses is the mind. Beyond the mind is the intellect. Higher than the intellect is the great Atman, the universal self. Higher than the great Atman is the unmanifest. And beyond the unmanifest is the person. You bring it all the way back to the person, all-pervading and imperceptible. The scripture feels like a big circle, moving from the senses to the mind, the intellect, the universal self, the unmanifest, and back to the person. We tend to think great spiritual wisdom is out there somewhere. The scripture states beyond the unmanifest is the person, all-pervading, everywhere, and imperceptible. We are everywhere, but to our senses we're imperceptible because we're part of everything. Our consciousness revolves through these various states of awareness. We're usually in the intellect. We're usually in the left brain. This is necessary for our day-to-day activities. Our brain acts as a computer, constantly calculating, recalculating, input, and making decisions. Our brains need rest from constantly being on watch. 2 weeks of vacation per year is okay, but just as we consistently need air, food, and water, we also need frequent spiritual connection to touch in to that right brain. In Matthew 4:4, it is written that it is not by bread alone that man can live, but by every word which proceeds from the mouth of God. There are times we meditate and are lucky to just slow down the left brain enough to take a long breath without worrying about something. And that may be enough spiritual food for that day. With practice and consistency, we will have an increasing number of days that we can quiet our mind and experience a short mental vacation. Worry seems to escape. Our intuition opens. We may have creative, original ideas. And then there are those rare, precious times when we recognize, feel, and understand at the deepest level that we are an integral part of an expansive universe. As metaphysicians, we believe heaven is a state of consciousness that we can experience in our physical bodies. Are these connections to the expanse of the universe a glimpse of heavenly consciousness? In Paul's letter to the Philippians, chapter 4, verses 6 through 9, do not worry over things, but always by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Jesus Christ. Finally, my brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honest, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good report, if there is any virtue and if there is any praise, think about these things. Those things which you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, do, and the God of peace shall be with you. On those days when you're just trying to get through the workday and take care of personal responsibilities without going crazy, we all have those days, let your request be known to God. Hold your intention like a prayer and release your intention to the universe. When you want to contemplate a decision or gain insight with all your own history and drama getting involved, let your request be known to God. Quiet your mind and open yourself to the energy around you. With daily practice, your confidence in your ability to direct your thoughts and access your intuition will grow. And there are times you want to feel the peace that Scripture says passes all understanding. This takes a little more work. Consistent devotion to getting through each day with a balanced, optimistic outlook, practicing contemplating your decisions, and learning to allow the universe to assist you through intuition and inspiration. This allows you to gently quiet the left brain and be open to the gifts and mindfulness of the right brain. It's a cumulative thing. At times, we will still experience that feeling of duality. We will feel that, man, I'm against the world. Our ego will see a situation as me versus them. But with consistent practice, we can learn to utilize all the gifts of our left and right brains, when and how we choose. Blessings.